Welcome to the gray area, 50 Shades of HR. My name is Leo Torres, and work with business owners every single day that deal with HR issues. Because running a business isn't just about operations. You know, you're dealing with people, you're dealing with humans. It's not black and white. There's a law, there's human resources, and then there's a gray area. It's the reality of things that we deal with every day. And I'm joined here by my co-host Carlos Ledo with the Ledo Law Group. He's an employment attorney and also practice immigration law.
I'm like a jack of all trades. I do it all. So,
yeah. And today we've got a really interesting topic for you guys. You know, we're talking about ICE and immigration and, you know, what to do when ICE shows up, you know, in the heat of that moment, and not to panic as a business owner, but how you handle that situation when ICE does come to your workplace and shows up and what to do there. So we're here with Carlos who could help us guide us through that conversation and pretty much start there. I think that one of the things that I wanted to start with that I think a lot of business owners need, just so they can clarify, is what the difference is between ICE, USCIS, the DOL, you know, and what their role is when they do this kind of thing.
right, yeah, because there's, you know, the federal government, they have an alphabet soup of acronyms for everything. They don't just tell you straight up what something does or what something is, and they've got subdivisions of acronyms. So
yeah,
USCIS is basically the agency that deals with immigration applications, processing of paperwork, things of that nature. It's United States Customs and Immigration Service. So basically, when you, let's say, come into the country and you apply initially for asylum, you could do that through USCIS. When you fill out a work permit application, work authorization, you do that through USCIS. You can, you know, for instance, Cubans that come in with parole, after 1 year, they're eligible to adjust permanent residency due to the Cuban Adjustment Act, and that would also go through USCIS. They are the ones that process paperwork. They can conduct interviews. They have individuals that actually that do those interviews in person at their different locations. They also do fingerprinting. So anything related to those sorts of applications and processing of applications, that's USCIS. Now we're talking about ICE. ICE is essentially the enforcement arm of Homeland Security as it relates to immigration. So they're immigration's customs enforcement. They are basically like the police for the immigration service. Their job is to enforce immigration law and apprehend individuals that are in violation of immigration law. So that's why you see them as a federal police force. They actually go to training like you would if you were in the DEA, ATF. All federal agencies generally go through, law enforcement agencies go through training at what's called FLETC, which is the National Training Center for Federal Law Enforcement Agents. So they go through that sort of process as well. And then we're talking about DOL. DOL is basically the Department of Labor, which is a separate arm, administrative arm of the federal government that creates rules, regulations, and enforces it as it relates to employment law. So we're talking about discriminatory actions against employers, anything that's related to unlawful or wrongful terminations, things of that nature, anything related to employment law, that's the Department of Labor, along with what we talk about with the FLSA, which is the Fair Labor Standards Act, which relates to how individuals are paid, what laws, you know, in terms of overtime, things of that nature, what relates to employers, what employees have in terms of their rights, in terms of their compensation, and things of that nature. So those are the different arms. And then you have one that you haven't mentioned, which is EOIR, which is the actual judicial system for immigration. So that's the immigration court. So there you have different branches of the immigration court throughout the country. You have judges, attorneys that represent the government, and then, of course, private attorneys that represent the defense, which are the immigrants or the aliens in this case that are going before the judge to plead their case. You know, an example, you come into the country, you apply for asylum. Eventually, you will end up before the court to plead your asylum case, and you have to provide evidence. If you have witnesses, things of that nature, your attorney will actually have to go through this adversarial process with the government to try and prove your asylum case.
Under which branch does the I-9 fall under?
That's, you know, the executive branch. Again, we're talking about immigration enforcement. Yeah. That's under Homeland Security within that branch. So if you're looking at I-9s, that would be under USCIS as purview. But then, of course, enforcement in person would be ICE. So ICE can actually come in and ask for I-9s to ensure their documentation, to ensure their accuracy.
Gotcha. That's one of the ones that the employers and business owners have to deal with, right, is the I-9, you know, making sure they're filled out properly, they're compliant, and all that good stuff. So, and it's one of the sources of penalties and fines.
Right, and that's the gateway for ICE, their enforcement.
Correct.
And also for the employers to make sure that they're compliant. So when you're filling out the I-9, one of the critical pieces is, employers aren't aware that you have 3 days to complete that I-9. So from the day that employee starts working for you, you have 3 days to complete the I-9 and get it submitted to Homeland Security for that to be verified. If you don't do that, then you're in violation of the law, and you could obviously be fined. And if it could range anywhere from $289 to $3,000 per instance of violations on I-9s.
Wow, that could be a lot of money.
Yeah. So let's say you have 10 employees, $3,000.
Yeah.
You're talking about $30,000 automatically. Right
Yeah,
there.
and the thing is, that's something that's really not talked about openly. Like, I think when I meet with business owners all the time and I talk to them about the I-9s, they have no idea what the penalties are when it comes to employing people that should not or shouldn't be working, right? Technically, let's say, or if their I-9s are out of compliance. Like, they have no idea really the amount of penalties. I think that for having somebody working for you who shouldn't be working for you, right? Let's say they don't have the right documentation in place. The fines can be up to $28,000 or something like, and they can.
It
be
can
really
get
excessive.
very expensive, and I think
per person,
right?
Yeah,
Per instance. So the thing about it is, you as a business owner aren't given a class on how to operate these I-9s, how to fill them out, how to complete them.
Right. Yeah.
You're just told that your employees need to have these, right?
Mhm.
So and it's on you how to figure out how to do that.
Correct.
How to best do it. So a lot of people they think it's just part of the paperwork. They're just filling out an application. It's not as serious as it truly is.
Right,
So they didn't give it the importance. And I think one thing that people don't realize is, when you have an error on the I-9, some people think, I could just go back and put white out over it. I could black it out. I could just do a new one. No, that's a legal document.
Yeah.
That's an evidentiary chain needs to exist between the employee starting and that I-9 being completed.
Yeah.
So if there's a mistake on it, you need to make an observable change, meaning
Right.
you could strike it with one line through and then right on top of it to show the change. If you now discover an error in the I-9 2 years down the road and you go to correct it, you don't backdate the I-9 to the original date. You date the original now. This current date, if you're doing a brand new I-9, you attach it to the old one
Right.
to show the chain of evidence there of why it was changed and what happened when the original was completed. Because if you complete it now and put today's date, then they're going to say, okay, then now you're out of compliance. This should have been completed 3 days within the employee's start date.
Correct.
And if they go to the original one, they're going to say, well, this is non-compliant because it's done incorrectly. So you have to have that chain.
Yeah. And you said the I-9 earlier, kind of, I guess sometimes the way that ICE or like immigrants should come into your business and say, hey, we want to do an I-9 audit. So like,
Right.
I guess going down that path is, if ICE does show up at the workplace, does that mean that the employer's in trouble? Like, are they there because the employer's in trouble, or typically, like, why are they there?
Sure. And sometimes what ends up happening is ICE will get a tip, right? Or they'll send some sort of information of, hey, listen, there's individuals working here that maybe don't have work authorization,
Right.
that may be here illegally or whatever the case may be. And then they'll show up to the workplace. And they have very limited scope in terms of what they can do in the workplace. They're not allowed into private areas of the business unless the business owners allow them into that. So
Right.
there's a good point to discuss sort of the distinction between an administrative warrant and a judicial warrant. So a judicial warrant is a warrant issued under the guise of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution in compliance with search and seizure laws. So a judge issues a warrant, gives a law enforcement professional the authority to go in and search somewhere based on evidence that's been provided.
Right.
They can go now and search a building, a house, whatever the case may be, for specific evidence within the warrant. An administrative warrant is one that's issued in immigration cases or instances where an ICE agent now has authority to go look for someone specific and arrest them or take them into custody because they are in violation of immigration law.
Right.
That does not allow them to go in and search places, private places, just because they have that warrant. That does not give them the authority. They need the compliance and the authorization from the business owner to be able to walk into that business and go through and search. So they have limits. They can, however, question individuals in the public spaces of the business, in a lobby, parking lot, anywhere that is not restricted from the general public.
So I think that's why it's important for like our employer friends to know that, number one, they have to have a judicial warrant. Right. To be able to access the building, go into the building. And number two, I guess based on what you're saying, maybe mark off areas that say private.
Right.
Because once you mark off private, restaurants are tough. Like, there are certain businesses that are just industries that are just going to be tough, to be able to keep people out of, like, you have servers or the hostesses at the front, you can't really keep them. But you in an office situation where you come into the reception area, you can just put private there or keep doors closed.
Or employees only, right?
Or employees only.
Exactly. So you need to have that demarcation line. I think labeling things and putting signs up to really create the separation between what is a public space and what is an employee only space or a private space.
Like an invisible barrier.
Exactly. And they can't cross that line. It's kind of like vampires, right? They can't do anything unless you invite them in, right? Garlic doesn't do anything to ICE agents, but that invisible line will help.
For sure. Depending on what you had for lunch, maybe,
exactly.
Heavy garlic. And so I guess so. Before that happens, though, when they first walk in, what's a good? I mean, I guess a receptionist should be prepared. Like a company should probably train their staff and say, hey, if ICE does come into the workplace, here's what you need to say, or here's what you need to ask, here's what you need to do. Like, so what are some things that a business can? I mean, besides training their folks, what is something that a receptionist could say, or somebody at the front desk could say?
Right. I would designate a point person to be the main point of contact for interactions with ICE. Right. So I mean, if it's a receptionist, if you feel comfortable enough with whoever works your front desk that they can handle that responsibility. Not everyone's cut out for that, right? A lot of people get nervous. A lot of people aren't great communicators in that way. Or if you want something a little bit more professional that really represents the business at a higher level that understands the business more, then you can have that individual come out. So the receptionist can say, excuse me, I'll get the person who's responsible for communicating with you, give me a moment, and bring them out. So the other thing is you want to have a protocol in place. So if you know that ICE is in the building, what do we do? What's our procedure? How do we interact with them? What do we say to them directly? So the initial thing is, okay,
So turning around and yelling, La mira, la mira.
That's not going to help. That's not because again, if you are, listen, this is another thing. If you are, as much as people want to protect their employees and our heart goes out to these individuals that, for whatever reason, they ended up in this country and don't have the legal status to be here, but they're working to support their families and do what they need to do. We all understand that, and we all have empathy for that. But they are in violation of law if they're not here legally, if they are now also have orders of deportation, and the law there's a process for that. If you obstruct that process, you're in obstruction of justice, essentially.
Gotcha. Yep.
So you can be found to be guilty for those sorts of things if you are purposely hiding them, purposely deceiving ICE agents. You're just creating a bigger problem for them than what's needed, because now you're involving yourself in the issue, and you're making them seem like they're trying to abscond from the law and they're trying to avoid capture by ICE or detention by ICE purposely, and it looks like they're fleeing the law as opposed to being compliant, going through the judicial process and trying to figure out a legal way of remaining in the country and winning their case.
And creating more liability, because if you are, I guess, keeping them from doing what they have to do, I mean, you could be physically detained. People can get hurt. You can get people hurt in your workplace. Things like that too. So.
Because again, like we're talking about, where the people want to help. Right. And sometimes in that process, they end up causing more problems. Correct. So if you physically try to stop an ICE agent from apprehending someone who they have a warrant for taken into custody, you can be physically harmed just because of the interaction, right? Like with any law enforcement officer, people have this thing where they see ICE agents as something other than law enforcement. They are law enforcement agents. They are federal law enforcement agents. If you see someone being arrested on the street, right, a police officer is coming up to arrest them, and you stop that, what do you think the police officer is going to do?
Of course.
If you become physical with that police officer, they're going to respond physically, apprehend you. You could be pepper sprayed, you could be handcuffed, you could be physically manhandled, depending on what level of physical altercation you instigate with the officer.
Right.
It's the same thing with ICE.
And that's why it's good that we talk about this, so that they know how to handle that situation and not let it escalate where it doesn't need to escalate, or to also know, because a lot of times when ICE shows up or when law enforcement shows up, sometimes they're in like an investigational kind of scenario, right? So that's why they don't always have to come in, or you shouldn't always have to let them in. You need to know when to say no, or when to say stop, or when to say yes, go ahead and come in.
Yeah, I mean, as much as they have legal authority, you need to hold them to that legal authority.
Correct.
Right? You have to hold them to the legal process. So if an ICE agent comes in, your point person comes out from the office, says, listen, okay, what are you here for? How can I help you? What is the purpose of your visit? And they say, we want to check I-9s.
Yeah.
Right? At that point, the point person can say, okay, based on federal statutes, we have 72 hours to comply with this request. Can you come back in 72 hours? We'll have everything ready for you at that point.
Correct.
Because you have 3 days to comply with that I-9 request.
Right.
During those 3 days, the business should then be checking the I-9s to ensure for compliance. If there are compliance issues, they should be fixed during that time period if they can be fixed. If they can't be fixed, then at that point you need to address that with ICE when they arrive and reasons for the non-compliance. I would even recommend if you find non-compliant I-9s, contact your attorney, your employment law attorney, or your general counsel if you have one, whatever the case may be, to see what the best response is.
Yeah, definitely. So they could come to your office for an I-9 inspection. They can come to look for somebody specifically, or they can come with a judicial warrant, or they can just come in an investigation.
Generally, they won't have a judicial warrant. Normally, local law enforcement will use the judicial warrants, or the FBI or somebody like that, FBI, will come in with a judicial warrant. ICE generally works under the administrative warrants because what they're doing is looking to apprehend individuals that are in violation of immigration law or who have deportation orders.
Yeah. What happens if an employee decides to come forward and tells an employer, hey, just so you know, the documents I have aren't really my documents, or I'm really expired, or the employer wasn't keeping track of that? Like, how should an employer handle that situation when they become aware or they know that
they need to terminate the employer immediately? They cannot continue to have an employee working for them that they know does not have legal authorization to work in this country, because then they are complicit in the violation of the law.
Yeah,
and then they're going to be subject to fines.
Yeah. And it's tough because a lot of times, I find like a lot of employers I deal with and I talk to on a regular basis that they're employing family members that are trying to help somebody out, and they're not realizing what kind of legal liability they're carrying, even up to the fines. And once they come out and they catch you, they fine you maybe the first time or second time, but at some point it becomes criminal. Yeah. Right. And you can actually go to jail for knowingly employing people that shouldn't be working.
And I think that's way down the road. It just rarely happens. But I mean, let's say it can get crazy. I think, for instance, let's say you have someone working for you that doesn't have proper documentation. You're trying to help them out. And then down the road, it's discovered by ICE. And then let's say for some reason that individual you didn't know is part of a subversive terrorist group or whatever the case may be, or a foreign national of another country that's part of an intelligence agency or part of a military of another country. Things can get dicey, right? And then, or if they've committed a crime in this country and you're unaware of it, things can get crazy. So it's better to be upfront and take the legal process. The other thing you think about is individuals that you're trying to help, sometimes you can actually be putting them in a worse position if you help them. And for instance, let's say an individual comes to a business and you want to give them work, and they don't have employment authorization yet. They're in process. So you start giving them money under the table, or they start working until they get their employment authorization ahead of time because you want them to earn a paycheck. You want to help them out. What ends up happening is, because that individual has worked without work authorization and they've applied for work authorization and they're looking to try and get permanent residency in this country, you've essentially stopped them from being able to get permanent residency because they violated immigration law by working without work authorization. So you've complicated the issue for them.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I guess in recapping a little bit. So ICE comes to the front door. A business owner, just to kind of recap, I guess what they should be doing is be able to tell a script or prepare the person at the front desk how to handle the situation. They come in and just be like, hey, what are you here for? We're here for either I-9s, whatever it may be. Have areas marked off that say private, employee only type of thing, right? If they're there for I-9s, you know that you got 72 hours to correct and fix your I-9s. If they're there with the correct warrant, then they obviously should be able to get access to wherever they need to go to find whatever they're looking for, or the person they're looking for. And what else? I mean, what are some other things that we can
I think the most important things are that, have a plan in place, make sure that your areas are marked off, have a point person, have a protocol, have a script to discuss things with ICE, have a procedure for I-9 audits. I would also say, listen, periodically, every 3, 6, 9, 12 months, conduct an I-9 audit internally. Make sure you go through them, make sure everything's correct. Because you don't want to be caught in a position where in 72 hours you have to go through 1,000 I-9s, and then that gets a little bit difficult. So what you want to do is make sure that you are self-auditing your I-9s over time to ensure compliance. The other thing is, if you're a Florida employer, or any employer really, and you have the ability to use E-Verify, here in Florida, any employer that's 25 or more employees has to use E-Verify. I would recommend everybody use E-Verify. It's a tool that the government has for verification of employment and work authorization. That helps a lot. What ends up happening is, if the I-9 is completed properly and you submitted it through E-Verify and everything looks good, but it comes back that the information was false or whatever the case may be, and the system didn't catch it, you're not liable as an employer because you did everything you had to do. You took the good faith measures and steps to ensure compliance
Right.
with labor law, right? Immigration law. So I would do those things. So anything that you could do on the front end to not make things more complicated if there is an audit, if ICE does come visit you, I think is important.
Yeah. This has all been really good and very informative for our viewers and for our employers that are watching out there, our employer friends out there. So we're going to put together like a kit for your front desk person or for your company that can help you kind of like figure out what to do if ICE does show up, what to say, scripting for that, and some checklists for you so you can use those checklists to make sure you've got everything in place and help protect you and protect your organization. And it's not just about resisting. This is about, just making sure that you know your rights and that we're holding, any law enforcement or federal agency to what they have to be doing, I guess, so to speak. And it's not about either. It's not political anyway. It's just
right.
It's
It's following procedure and holding them
procedure.
accountable to what it is their responsibilities are and what they're legally authorized to do.
Exactly.
And again, if you have any questions about what this process entails, or if you have any questions about how to best protect your workplace or what to do as an employer when it relates to human resources, policies, procedure, employment law specifically, that's what I do for a lot of my clients.
Yeah, it's important that you have a labor attorney, or an immigration attorney, both, right? Which you happen to do both.
I do both, yes.
To have somebody that you can rely on, somebody you can pick up the phone and call and say, "Hey, listen, I have this situation right now. I need your help," and have somebody you can call. And Carlos, the Lato law firm, can do that for you. And also working with an HR outsourcing company that can help you too, to help answer any questions, help you get those I-9s in order, and help you check those and things like that. So there's tools and there's people out there that can help you with that kind of stuff. So. All right, cool. Thank you. This is a great episode. I think it was very informative. Anything else that we should?
No, I think ultimately, I think like Leo just said, you should have partners that back you and that understand you. So I think a company like Employee Easy or my firm can assist you in that, and that's what we're here for.
Yep. And this is exactly why the gray area was created, right? Because there's situations that happen every day. We don't know how to handle them in real life, and that's why we're here. So thank you guys for tuning in, and see you in the next episode.